And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Warner Brother. I love the play on words there. Writes, comicbook.com is reporting that M Night Shyamalan is in talks with DC and Marvel to direct a superhero movie. That's actually not true, but we'll get to that in a second. Between the two, I hope he directs an MCU movie because I think the MCU is too cookie cutter and formulaic, and it would be a good twist to see them change things up with a director that indulges in surprise endings. Thoughts? Glass was terrible, but Split and Unbreakable were great. All right, thanks a lot for saying that in. And yeah, I got to agree with you. Glass was terrible. I was so excited for Glass. Because, I mean, everybody likes Unbreakable. Split was surprisingly good. And then, of course, we got Glass, and it didn't live up to the hype that we were kind of hoping for. And that's fine, whatever. There have been, you see going around Twitter and right now in the last 24 hours, these things saying that it's being reported that M. Night is in talks with Marvel and DC to direct a movie. That is actually not the case. What has happened is that M. Night has recently revealed that he has had talks before, previously, past tense, talking with these studios. Here's what came out. This is an interview he did with comicbook.com, and he said the following. I've had many conversations over the years about many of the superheroes with many of the studios that own them and how we would want to approach it. And it's one of those things that I think is my style. If there was ever a situation, I did it. Of course, he made a superhero movie in Unbreakable. I made my comic book movie the way I wanted to make my comic book movie. But the minimalism, the insinuating, the not using CGI, all of that stuff is very different language. So whenever we've had those conversations in the past about X, Y, or Z person, it's your character or franchise. I get so nervous about like, hey, this is not what you would want me to do to make it very quiet and tiny and introspective. So basically what we've got here is M. Night has said he has spoken with these guys in the past. He has had these conversations with these studios, and that's great. But he said, I never really wanted to jump at these things because the types of movies I make are not the types of movies that these guys would want to do. And I've got to say, he's absolutely correct. I don't think an M. Night movie would play well with MCU audiences or play particularly well with DC EU audiences either. Look, when we go into these movies, we go in with certain expectations about what we are expecting to see in our comic book movie. You know, I talk about this a lot with Superman Returns. Superman Returns that had Brandon Routh, and I love Brandon Routh as Superman. I thought he was great. But it was a very different kind of movie from what an audience going to see a Superman movie rightfully were kind of expecting to see. You can't have a Superman movie where the big thing he fights is a falling airplane. That can't be your big action sequence or set piece for a movie like that, right? It's got to have something a little bit more to it. And I understand that. And for that reason, I've always said that I thought Superman Returns was a very good movie, but it was a very poor comic book movie, if that makes any sense. I mean, I understood what they were going for, and I just think that while we can all appreciate a movie like Unbreakable, I think a lot of people who are going to see an MCU movie or a DC movie, if they were going with those expectations, I can't help but wonder if people would walk out disappointed because not that it wasn't good, but it wasn't what we expect in those types of movies. And by the way, Warner Brother, I would suggest that like MCU movies are not cookie cutter at all. I reject that argument completely because Doctor Strange is a completely different kind of movie than Ant-Man was. And Ant-Man as a heist kind of movie was incredibly different than Captain America Winter Soldier, more like a 70s political thriller. And that movie was very different from Avengers Endgame. And that movie was very different from whatever. I just don't agree with this notion that MCU puts out cookie cutter movies. There's nothing to substantiate that. Do they try to make them a little more lighthearted? Yes, they do, because that's what they believe the audience wants. Do they try to infuse it with some humor in all of them? Absolutely, because that's the balance they tend to strike. But beyond that, the movies are very different from each other. In the same way that I think DC movies are quite different from each other. I thought, for example, obviously Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey was a very, very different movie than Aquaman, right? And all that kind of stuff. But it does raise the question, if M. Night were to do a Marvel or DC movie, which would be the better fit for him? Frankly, I think he could make a great movie regardless. He's also made some very, very crappy movies, but I think the better fit for him, honestly, for me, I think would be DC. I think DC would be a better fit. I don't think DC would be a good fit for M. Night. I don't, but I think it would be a better fit. Because I think some of his traditional tropes that he likes to use and at times uses very effectively, I think those things would fit in better in a world where the Dark Knight lives. Again, I don't think he would be a good fit for the DC universe, but he'd be a better fit there than he would be in the Marvel universe. So just to sum up again, let's clear the one thing up. He is not in talks with Marvel and DC to make a movie. He has in the past had those discussions and kind of explained why it never really worked out. And I thought he made a lot of sense with the things he said. And I'm glad when he makes good movies, I'm glad we get his movies outside of the DCU and the MCU. And one of the great things about Unbreakable, Split, and Glass, even though I didn't like Glass, but one of the great things about those movies is that they're not MCU or DC. We need some of these types of movies that are not under the Marvel corporate banner. And I love the Marvel corporate banner movies, I do, and are not under the DC corporate banner. And I like those movies too. But it's good that we get filmmakers like M. Night who makes movies outside of them. When they work, like Unbreakable, and even when they don't work, like Glass. I think it's good that those movies get made. So what I don't want to see happen is I don't want to have every filmmaker that comes up that wants to make comic book type material has to make a choice. You either make it with Marvel or you make it with DC. I want to see some more variations in that. So I'm kind of glad he didn't do it, to be honest with you. Question is, what do you guys think about that? Would you like to see M. Night direct a Marvel or DC film? Regardless of that, which one of the two banners do you think he would be a better fit for theoretically? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys.